Tonight we're going to talk about dead silence, fear and terror on the anthrax trail, also biogerm warfare, and these dead microbiologists. Bob Cohen, Eric Nadler, our special guests tonight, and they're next on Coast to Coast AM. We have two special guests for you this hour and for the rest of the show. Bob Cohen, filmmaker, journalist, war correspondent whose work is always focused on uncovering hidden truths. He was based in Africa for 15 years as a correspondent for CNN International, receiving a major award for the best television war correspondent for his reporting from Liberia. He is also a consultant to the United Nations in conflict zones and humanitarian emergencies. Here's Bob Cohen, first of all. Hi, Bob. How are you?
Great to be with you, George.
Likewise. I'm looking forward to this, Bob. Eric Nadler, author, TV producer, filmmaker. He has written for Rolling Stone, Mother Jones, Harper's, and The New Republic, and his films featured on PBS, the Sundance Channel, and Court TV. He has produced several PBS frontline programs, including remember the BCCI bank story? Well, he did that, the Bank of Crooks and Criminals and the Secret Arming of Saudi Arabia. Here's Eric Nadler. Eric, good to have you with us, too.
Great to be here, George.
With the work that you two have done, we could go on for 12 hours about the various things that you've done. I mean, just amazing work for both of you.
Thanks so much.
Dead silence. Let's start with you, Bob, and then you, Eric, and then let's just open it up for both of you. How did you, Bob, get involved with this?
Well, George, for me, the story's got a personal touch. I'm from Africa, from Zimbabwe, which used to be called Rhodesia. And that's where I grew up. And I came of age at a time of a bloody civil war. And it's a little-known fact that the largest outbreak of anthrax in modern history took place in my home country during that war. And it's long been suspected that it was the result of biological warfare. And then during the course of my work as a journalist, I uncovered a lot of clues that I never really followed up on, but I was always fascinated by the use of biological weapons in southern Africa, covert use of biological weapons. And I left Africa and arrived in New York City in the weeks following 9/11, just as those anthrax attacks were happening. And basically was wondering whether perhaps there was a connection between the anthrax attacks in the United States and that outbreak in my home country. And that's what got me looking into this, and that's when I hooked up with my old colleague, Eric Nadler, who had been investigating the nuclear underground. And I'll let Eric sort of tell his story. But
okay, go ahead, Eric. Pick it up.
Yeah, for whatever reason, I've spent a good portion of my journalistic career involved in weapons of mass destruction matters. I did a film in 2002 called Stealing the Fire, which looked into the sale of nuclear weapon widgets on the black and gray markets, and went into the AQ-Con network, and we also had access to the only German convicted of nuclear espionage since Klaus Fuchs, a German engineer named Karl-Heinz Schaab, who stole uranium enrichment plants from the West and sold them to Saddam Hussein. And they caught him, and he pled guilty to treason, and he was fined $32,000 and given a suspended sentence.
Jeez.
So I kind of knew there was a lot to study in this area.
And let me ask you this even before we get into the major topic, Eric, because I've always wanted someone who understands this AQ-Con story.
Yeah.
Why was he only given basically house arrest, hand slap? I mean, did he know people, or is there a dark hidden secret?
Two things. One, he's a superhero in Pakistan. He is beloved. He gave the Muslim world the atomic bomb. This means he is a revered figure, very powerful. People demonstrate in the streets for him. Also, he assembled a clandestine network of front companies and other material procurers to get the equipment, the very specialized equipment to build a nuclear weapon. And these are Western firms with operations. They're multinationals, in Germany, UK, and U.S.
Sure.
So he knows who's dirty, so they let him go with the wrist slap.
He knows too much, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Which is a basis for a lot of your work in Dead Silence. I mean, this is far bigger a story than I think the mainstream media is not touching. And that, of course, brings up another question, both to you, Bob and Eric. Why do we need top-notch investigators and journalists like you two to come up with stories like this, where the resources of these major networks, they just don't touch stories like this? Why not?
I've learned one thing in my years of international reporting, and I've worked for network news operations in the United States and for projects funded in Canada, UK, Germany, Australia. So I understand how national news bureaus approach various work. There's a line they draw in the American media. I don't think they get together in a room and draw it, but they kind of get their cues from people at high levels. And there are areas they won't investigate and stuff they won't follow up on. And this whole anthrax business is one of them.
Well, here we go. Anthrax attacks. Shortly after 9/11, all of a sudden we had this horrible thing happen in this country. We were panicked. We thought, of course, it was done by Islamic terrorists again. And we never truly got that answer at that time. And then all of a sudden the FBI fingered an individual who they had to, never really arrested. And then he sued, I believe, and got a lot of money for false charges and accusations. And then this person commits suicide. Tell me about Bruce Ivins. Who wants that?
Well, like you said, George, the anthrax attacks, they happened. Many people consider them the 1-2 punch 9/11 anthrax attacks. And they kind of disappeared, for a long time. They kind of disappeared from consciousness. Everybody talks about 9/11. There's a memorial every year. But, those anthrax attacks kind of disappeared. And they did focus on Stephen Hatfield, this scientist. And they paid him a lot of money. You're right. It was almost $6 million, $5.8 million they settled within the FBI. And that investigation went nowhere. And then last August 1st, the FBI announced that they had solved the anthrax attacks. And they had found another U.S. Army scientist, Bruce Ivins, who was working at Fort Detrick, which is U.S. Army's top biodefense, biowar germ lab down in Frederick, Maryland. And basically they said he's the guy who did it, and unfortunately he's dead. He's just committed suicide. And Eric and I were in the editing room finishing up our film. We just spent several years traveling around the world, actually following a trail of dead microbiology.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. That's another fascinating.
Bruce Ivins for us was, the latest in a long list. And so basically, the FBI quickly wanted to close this case. There'd be no trial. It'll never have to be proven in court.
Clean and simple for them.
Well, we interviewed the deputy commander of Fort Detrick, the place where Bruce Ivins worked, and those were his exact words. Nice and convenient, isn't it? So.
Nice and convenient as well.
Yes, and we've interviewed Ivins' co-workers, and they are unanimous in at least the ones we talked to, are unanimous in the belief that he's innocent and was set up. And they say that the equipment at Fort Detrick and Ivins' skill set would not have allowed him to prepare the super sophisticated anthrax that were found in the envelopes sent to Capitol Hill. That was where the really fine anthrax powder went. In fact, when U.S. Army scientists in their full biohazard suits and, biosafety level 4 laboratory hermetically sealed chambers opened up the Leahy letter, and they wanted to put the powder onto slides, but it wouldn't stay on the slides. It floated into the air. It was a manufactured piece of business that people said was the most sophisticated anthrax they'd ever seen. Some people call it weaponized. That's a word that's debatable, but what the floating ability meant was that it could travel through the air and in very minute particle spores. 1 micron is what we learned the attack powders were, which is a phenomenally small piece of business. It's breathed into the lung where it